I'll be presiding this evening. And in a moment, we're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And before we do that, I want to ask that once we finish reciting the pledge, that we remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of and out of respect for Michelle Bennett, who we were so sorry to learn of her passing over the weekend. She was a member of our Lake George family, past basketball coach, and wife of our high school teacher, Jeff Bennett. Let's get started, and everyone who can, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Okay, let's get things started tonight with, we have a District Code of Conduct public hearing, and we've got Bonnie Hart presenting this evening. Hi, Bonnie.
Oh, yeah. Welcome. Thank you.
That's being worked on. I just want to mention that Tricia Biles is present virtually this evening. I meant to mention that before we got started. There she is.
Thank you. This looks okay. So the presentation tonight, I'm not going to really get into what's in the content of the District Code of Conduct. You've had that ahead of time. But I wanted to spend, pardon me, more time talking about the process that was utilized. So I want to start with what the charge of the committee was. That was determined like last summer, I believe. So they're ready to. So first it was to collaborate with a group of all stakeholders to develop a K-12 code of conduct, an overarching umbrella that would consist of the K-6 building code of conduct as well as the 7 through 12. Looking to develop a guide to good citizenship, promoting positive behavior based on principles of mutual respect, citizenship, character, acceptance, honesty, and integrity. Looking to govern the conduct of students, teachers, other staff personnel, visitors, vendors, etc. And to be in compliance with the law for the New York State Part 100.2 requirement. So on this slide, you could see which who was part of the overall committee. We had a good representation of both internal and external stakeholders. We had 4 administrators, 8 school personnel, and 9 parents, students, community members. So here is the process that was used. Initially, like many projects, you start with a blank piece of paper and you don't even know where to begin. What I knew when I took this on was I wanted to come up with an approach where our time was used efficiently and worked smarter, not harder. A lot of the work was done behind the scenes, so we could do this in an aggressive timeline. But I want to assure you that even though a lot of work was done in between meetings, the process was very collaborative, where all people on the committee had an equal voice. So I started with Erie 1, and I got the template that Erie 1 had. And they developed this guideline when the SAVE legislation was first passed. It was a great resource, but it did have some drawbacks. First, it was very outdated. It was back in the early 2000s, so a lot has changed in education since then. And the formatting that it came in was just atrocious to work with. But it gave us a starting point. From there, I identified the 15 mandatory components that were needed. And I did a crosswalk. I went and looked for 5 comparable schools. Those schools you could see were listed. I took Greenwich, Fort Anne, Galway, Schuylerville, and South Glens Falls. And I did a crosswalk. I chose those 5 schools for a number of reasons. They were recently updated and adopted by their current Board of Ed. They were easily accessible for me as an outsider going in and getting it. And that many of those schools have similar demographics as us. I thought it was a good representation. From there, step 3, thank you. This is where the bulk of the time was spent. The committee, the large committee that you saw before, we broke into 3 smaller committees, where each smaller committee would tackle 5 of those 15 components. And they were provided with lots of paper, where one was the Erie 1 template suggestion, and then each of the 5 schools' language was side by side. And any deviations from the Erie 1 template were highlighted. So the committees could easily identify what was different within each school. Then the hard part was wordsmithing and making it Lake George, unique to Lake George. Does this happen in our school? And how did we want to customize it? There were times there wasn't much changes from the template, and other times where we did change it for what is done actually in Lake George. The committee, we have the 15 components, as you will see in the District Code of Conduct, but the committee also felt strong that DASA, the Dignity Act of all students, needed to be an additional component. So our Code of Conduct has 16 components on that. We had 3 rather long in-person meetings to go through this, and then there was ongoing electronic collaboration. So a lot of the work, they were given homework to preview ahead of time and come in with what they felt needed to be changed, or which school was a good example or a good model to follow. Step 4, then each committee member had access to every single component, not just the 5 that their individual subcommittee worked on, but they had access to all of the components, so they could review and give suggestions at that point. There was definitely a lot of review and looking for consistency among language. For instance, throughout the Code of Conduct, the different components, they list a lot of your protected classes. So we wanted that list of protected classes to be the same throughout. And that's also where a lot has changed from the BOCES 1, the Erie 1 template. Back in 2002, there weren't as many protected classes as there are now. We also did look for, some of this was put more on my main facilitators, the administrators, making sure there was nothing conflicting with existing Board of Ed policies, because some of the components already had a Board of Ed policy. So we wanted to make sure what was in this overarching Code of Conduct is consistent with what already exists. And then It went to the school attorneys and they reviewed it and gave some feedback. Their feedback was minimal. I feel it was a lot of formatting. And a few changes like educational law, number of changes, but there was nothing huge that they said you can't have in there. And that's what brings us to where we are today. The next slide just lists all of the mandatory components. The one in red is the additional. That's not the mandatory, but that's what the committee felt was needed to add. And that's where I am at. Are there any out of the 5, 3 out of the 5 did, yes. So some included it in essential partners, what the Dignity Act coordinator's role was. Some had a whole separate component. There was one school that just took BOCES Area 1's template and put their name on it. Yeah, but all the others really did customize it.
Bonnie, I just want to say, I really like the way your mind works and the way.
That's scary.
I like the way you tackled this, and I'm so grateful to you and to this awesome committee for providing this like very essential guiding document for our school district. So many policies give reference to the school, the district code of conduct, and it's just an essential document, and you and the committee have really provided a great service, and it's clear. The organizational approach was very thorough, and I'm just grateful. I just wanted to say
Well,
that.
thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the explanation of how you got to this many-page document. And I love that you listed who was on the committee. It's great to see the involvement from the community and within the district. And that gives it just a lot of value, I think. I like that you used recent things that other districts had done and then customized it. I think that just the approach was really great. And thank you for helping us understand how you got to this point.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking on this project. I know you were charged with it last summer, but you've done an amazing job really looking at it. It's thorough, and you involved a lot of people, which is really what we'd like to see. So thank you again for an amazing job.
Thank you.
And then, so this is a public hearing on this document, and so this would be coming for a board vote next month. So there's opportunity for people to give feedback in the meantime. Yes, yep, and it is linked in the agenda for anybody to read it.
The document is also hyperlinked. So if from the table of contents, if you just want to jump to one section, they could just click on that, and then in the footer, they could always click to go back to the table of contents. So it saves many pages of scrolling.
Thank you. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you.
That's a good tip.
Okay. And next up, we have Dr. Huntley with the non-instructional budget presentation.
Thank you. Before Bonnie leaves, I do want to thank her also, like the board has already done. The work that she has done involved many, many hours of work here in this room with 20 some odd people, 21. Just a little story before we start. When I first got here, yeah. Hold it up a little bit higher. Okay. I was getting a little feedback, but I think I'm good now. Yeah, I think so. So when I first got here, there were plenty of things to do. And so I was co-chair of this committee. So I attended the beginning of, actually, Bonnie and I met ahead of time before any of the committee work was done. And I started to think, she has done so much work on this, that she is so far beyond where I am, that I'll just take this one step at a time. So I came into the first meeting, Bonnie got up and really took the meeting over. So I took the off the chair. that was one of the first things that I did with delegation. And I don't regret one second of making that decision. Bonnie was just terrific in moving this initiative, this effort forward, very important code of conduct work. So thank you so much, Bonnie. And I want to thank the committee too, and I will when we get a little farther along in the process. But I know there's at least one committee member here, Wendy McCabe. I think you were on the committee, weren't you? Thank you so much, Wendy. Amanda, you were on that. That's right, you were on the committee also. Thank you, Amanda. So it was a real, it was one of those efforts that I've been noticing in this community. When we want to get things done, we bring the community together. And in this case, this was just a great example of that. We had community members, parents, we had students, we had administrators. The two administrators here went to every meeting. So thank you, Jim and Fran, for your efforts on this work. Who'd I miss out? But Megan, you were in those too. But that's right. How can I forget that? I can't. Megan was the computer on the table, doing it virtually. Yeah. Thank you for your work, Megan. But it typifies what I've been noticing here in my short stay as an interim superintendent, the community coming together and working on these sort of things. It's really rewarding. So if I can have the clicker, somebody has it. There we go. Thank you. That one. Yep. So my presentation is relatively short. This is a non-instructional budget presentation. We keep this one relatively short. But so the theme is taken from our mission statement. We start the budget process with the mission statement. Where else would you start your budget process or any process in the district? So empowering all is pulled from the mission statement. So that's the theme of this budget year. And here's the mission statement. So as we're going through this budget process, and this is the first presentation, what we want to do is tie the budget with the mission statement so that we're all together in terms of moving forward. So when we think about developing this budget, how does the budget influence personalized opportunities, or how does personalized opportunities influence the budget? It goes both ways. And then we look at empower. How are we empowering our students with this spending plan that we've been working on for so long now, and now we're beginning to present it. If we go to one of our other presentations, if you remember, we emphasize the word all, because in Lake George, all means all. Every student that walks in this door deserves the very best educational program that this mission statement in this district can provide, without exception. We emphasize students. How does the budget emphasize and support our students? And then how does the budget promote lifelong learners, leaders, and global citizens? So that's the beginning of the budget. This is the beginning of the budget process. So now we move on very quickly into the nitty-gritty of the non-instructional budget, which sometimes doesn't seem as exciting as other aspects of the budget. But so here we're keeping pace. This is a budget that's not going to, there are not a lot of additional expenditures in this budget anyplace, but we're keeping pace. And the stage curtain is being replaced. It's outlived its useful purpose. So we're looking to replace the stage curtain, the gym wall pads at the high school. In our insurance inspection, the basketball backstop hardware was identified as needing to be replaced. So we're going to, so that's in the budget to have that replaced. We have a grass catcher that we're putting in the budget in terms of keeping pace. That's a replacement. For new items, we're looking at a flagpole softball field and a top dresser for athletic fields. For those of you who might not know what a top dresser is, fields will typically naturally become uneven with the turn of the seasons. So what we do, what we've been doing here is taking the trucks out and throwing dirt and, top dirt down, and smoothing it out, raking it out, and things like that. This is a piece of equipment that will do that work as well, frankly, better than doing it by hand. So this will help out our athletic fields, our football field, our soccer fields, our baseball and softball fields, and I don't know what else I'm leaving out, but all of our fields. So here you get a sense of what I talked about earlier, and that's the percentage change. You're not seeing much change in terms of this budget. If you go all the way to the right, you'll see that the Board of Education, these are component parts of this aspect of the budget. There's no change with the Board of Education, minimal change in terms of administrative services. That's mostly in the area of salaries. In non-instruction, not across the district. O&M, operation and maintenance, is just about even. You'll see a change in transportation services that is a little bit more dramatic than the others. All that is correcting the budget. In other words, we're making the budget more in line with expenditures. We're not expending as much as we budgeted. And you can almost understand why, because over the last 2 years, our transportation services have been not consistent with, when you consider COVID, and in some cases, our transportation services has been reduced. In other cases, it's been increased. When we were delivering things to students last year through our transportation system, we did a little bit of extra transportation. But in other cases, we were doing less transportation. So ultimately, it's less than 0.5% in terms of an increase. This is the distribution of the, this is not the whole budget, this is the non-instructional budget. So this is how the non-instructional budget is distributed. And you'll see that operations and maintenance is over 55% of the non-instructional budget, which is what it should be. Transportation right around 20%, that's right where it should be, same with administrative services. Now this is this represents the entire budget. So non-instructional, you can see that that piece of the pie is about 14%. Instructional is where it should be, right about half. And undistributed is about 35%. And that includes employee benefits, debt service, and transfers in the undistributed. But we're not covering that today. So we do have a couple of propositions coming out of this side of the budget. This is a bus. We're looking to replace one 66 passenger bus with a 60 passenger bus. The strategy here is to reduce all of our buses from 66 passenger to 60 passenger. It represents a decline in enrollment. We do not need as many 66 passenger buses. The 60 work just as well and serve our purposes just as well. So in Lake George, what we've been doing over the years is purchasing one bus each year and retiring one bus each year, so that we have about a 10-year replacement plan. When you get anywhere above 10 years, then you're actually, I kind of like 8 years, but here we're doing 10 years. You avoid the high maintenance costs by turning your buses over every, frankly, 8 years. But we hang on to ours for 10. We might be on that. It ultimately is less of a cost if you turn them over a little bit more frequently. So the old bus goes to surplus. For those of you who might be wondering, we put them out to auction and usually get between $3,000 and $5,000 out of the old used buses. way that we purchase the new buses is through a bond anticipation note, which is a 5-year ban. So we pay for the bus over a 5-year period of time. And this district has done a great job in terms of keeping that process going. So it's expected, it's part of the budget process. It keeps the line item very steady over the years. We're also recommending a capital reserve fund. Currently, there are needs in the district that we've identified here in these in our board meeting earlier in the fall through the process where every 5 years our architectural firms comes through the district and takes an assessment of what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done. So this will not address everything that needs to be done, but this seems to be a palatable, in my opinion, a palatable figure for the community, and also something that will help address the needs of the district as time goes on. But anyhow, we're looking for a $10 million capital reserve to begin the reserve now. It takes Board of Education authorization. It takes a community vote, a referendum to pass this establishment of the capital reserve. We would then use unallocated funds to support this reserve. We would not increase taxes to create this reserve. And at any point in time in the future, as this fund is accumulating, if you needed it, if you wanted it, then you would have to go to the voters in order to authorize whatever building project or any other expenditure that can come out of this capital reserve for. So in just a quick summary on state aid, we received, districts across New York State received a 3% increase in foundation aid, which is a good year. It's a really good year for schools. In Lake George's case, because you're so dependent on the local taxpayer, it means a $48,000 increase in your on your revenue side. So, and in addition, the state aid budget this year fully funds expense-based aids, and expense-based aids are things like building aid, transportation aid, BOCES aid, those sorts of expense-based aids. So we're fortunate that they're fully funded. To move a little bit further on the presentation, as I mentioned, the major source of revenue in the Lake George Central School District is no news to anybody. It's a local taxpayer. The STAR program is in place. The first two bullet items, the STAR exemption and STAR credit checks, are identical to last year. There's no change. The third bullet item, the proposal for tax rebate credit program, we'll talk to you about later as the budget process moves forward, because this has not yet been approved. If it is approved, then we'll bring it back to the Board of Education for further explanation on what that is. Important dates, March 8th, we have the instructional budget presentation, April 12th, the undistributed budget and anticipated revenue presentation, and that will be at the elementary school, the Elm School Little Theater. May 3rd, public hearing. May 17th, the annual meeting and the budget vote in the gymnasium here over at the elementary school. All day, 9 to 8. 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's where we are with the budget.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Any questions or comments? Anybody?
Okay, you're welcome.
Doug, this material will be located on the website somewhere,
Yes.
right?
Do you have it up already, Sarah, or,
I don't, but I can.
oh, you will, okay,
Okay, great. And thank you, Doug.
you're welcome.
Next up, we have our elementary update with Mr. Conway. And I'm going to step out for 1 minute.
So I wanted to make you aware that the district is hosting the second vaccination clinic that is sponsored by the Department of Health Thursday from 4 to 5:30 in the elementary school cafeteria in the Little Theater. We sent this information out. It's advertised on the website as well. Boosters are available. And if anybody needs to schedule a first shot at that clinic, they would need to call Warren County Public Health to register. But again, it's the second one. We held one a few weeks back, if you remember. So it was a nice service that we were providing for the community as a district. A couple of big events that I'm going to mention, and that will be it. One is our math night, which is being held tomorrow night from 6 to 7 for students in grades K through 6. We're really excited to be hosting this. Students are involved in math games and activities and have opportunities to travel around the building, win prizes. And in the past, we held the event in the cafeteria. It was a pretty tight space, and it was very much driven by the adults in the building. This event is for students, where they've been involved in creating a lot of the activities and the opportunities. So it was put together by one of our cabinet action teams. And again, students are taking an active role in running the event. And this year it will be held in the gym, in the Little Theater, in the cafeteria, the clusters. So we're spreading folks out, but we're excited to host that event again because it's a big event and a good tradition for us. The second event is our elementary school Winter Olympics celebration. Last one we did was back in 2018. So Friday, January 18th. And if you picture a school-wide event, for those of you that were able to go to our sing-along, we start the day outside with an opening ceremony. And again, this event was driven by our cabinet, but the leadership roles have been taken on by students. And I'll give you an example of what the kids are doing. So each grade level has a specific role, and then some other groups. So our band, and they've been practicing the Olympic theme. It's kind of cool to walk down the halls at the end of the day and you hear that going on. But our trumpets and drums and the opening ceremony on a playlist that was created by students in the music department. And the 6th grade is overseeing the whole opening ceremony. The 5th grade has designed this world language quilt with Miss Martineau that's going to be in the gym. 4th graders have been busy preparing to sing the national anthem. Love that. They're sounding great. The 3rd graders have put together slides with information on the Olympics that are going to be played during the kids' lunchtime that day. 2nd grade has researched different Olympic sports, and they're sharing that information with the K-6 student body. 1st graders put together medals in art class, and they're interesting designs. Our kindergarten kids have put posters up around the school about the Olympics. Teachers are running outside activities, the actual events that the kids are participating, so our physical education teachers. We also are connecting this with one of the key components when I feel we're blessed that our kids have been in school. It's different. It's a different kind of learning that we've been dealing with. But some of what we've lost that interaction with our students. Sweethearts and Heroes is going to be joining us that day with a focus on empathy and a focus on really those connections. So we're excited about that. It was kind of a big land for us for this event. And they'll be providing some assemblies for different age groups, but then also working with our kids more in circles that are communication circles, I'll call them. And then we also have other staff members who are going to be providing some different sessions. Cornell Cooperative Extension is going to be in, Warren Washington Association of Mental Health, and someone from the Rutland Boys and Girls Club. And the events, while fun and active, will also have a connection to the social emotional side of things. So it's a big event for us. And again, students are very much involved in creating the day, which is obviously a big theme of ours, that they're taking an active leadership role in making their school a better place. So that's all I've got. Any questions, anything? Okay.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, next up, we have Mr. Kokoza with the secondary update.
Hi, good evening. So completely student proposed, initiated, planned, and implemented. On January 26th, we had the first ever Junior National Honor Art Society and Senior National Honor Society induction ceremony here at the high school, in which 11 middle school students were inducted into the Honor Society and 11 senior high students were inducted. So our teachers about this. It got a little delayed with COVID, and we were pleased to have it completely student run. Those seniors who are in this society who graduate this year will have a special stole accompanying their graduation regalia, commemorating their accomplishment in this scholarship of art, which is awesome. A reminder that on Tuesday, March 1st, Mike Nearney, who's been coming to Lake George High School for about 10 years now, is coming back to speak to our parents and students and staff and community. It's Tuesday, March 1st here in the library at 6 o'clock. The topic of his academy or presentation is Don't Hit Send, the impact of social media on the adolescent brain and being addicted to social media. So again, that's Tuesday, March 1st, 6 o'clock here in the library. And finally, on March 4th, our Alumni Association is having another fundraiser to help support their efforts. March 4th at 4 o'clock, they're having chicken parm dinners that you can purchase and pick up at Mezzaluna. So that's March 4th. So come out to support our Alumni Association. And information about that fundraiser is on the alumni webpage. That's my update.
Thank you, Fran. That's good stuff. Any questions or comments? No, thank you. Next up, we have the Dr. Huntley with the superintendent's report.
Thank you. My report focuses primarily on masking. One kind of have a limited focus for the presentation or for the my part in this, and primarily because a good number of things have been coming our way recently. It seems as though, my experience with COVID has been in the direction that we've been getting from all sorts of different places has resulted in the district being very nimble and very very good at pivoting on moment's notice. And the administrators know that, frankly, much better than I do, and parents and you know it extremely well, too. So the most recent news, I think, is good news. So I'd like to back up just a little bit, but only maybe a week or so. There are 31 component school districts in our Washington, Saratoga, Warren, Hamilton, Essex, BOCES, and Lynn King actually represents our district, and I believe you're vice president of that BOCES board. So the 31 component school district superintendents all participate in an advocacy committee for our region. So we meet with the district superintendent, and our direction we certainly share and work with, or get from and share with each of our respective boards of education. So over the last few months, as we're working with COVID issues, we're also advocating, and we've been doing this for a long time. Our advocacy efforts are fairly powerful. We're pretty organized. If I gave you the history of all of this, it would take a while, but let me just say, when we first started about maybe 12 or 13 years ago, or prior to organizing, we were all working independently. Some districts didn't advocate at all, which was most districts, and some districts were advocating pretty much on their own, so they had a single voice or one or two voices, and those voices weren't heard as nearly as loudly as 31 voices are heard, representing a whole region of the state and a lot of different school districts, a lot of different boards of education, and a lot of different communities. So we've worked our way into conversations with Department of Budget, the Governor's Office, State Education Department, all levels of the State Education Department. We meet with them on a regular basis, an annual basis. It's a really, we've turned into a really good advocacy entity. The most recent advocacy work we did was to send Governor Hochul and Commissioner Mary Bessette, the New York State Department of Health Commissioner, I'm sorry, a letter. And it's not only a letter. You know, we're meeting with people, we follow up, we work with the governors. It's more than a letter, but the letter represents our message, and this is our voice of the 31 component school districts in this region. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. I do have extra copies of it, so I'll put it right here for anyone that might want one. But I'll just summarize a little bit of it. So from the school district's perspectives, as told by the superintendent of schools, it's now time, this is what part of the messaging, it's now time to forge ahead and develop a pathway to normalcy. We talk about speaking with our families. The consistent message received is how they need to get back to normal. Frankly, they need more consistency from their schools, and we agree with that concept. Therefore, we're asking the state to consider working with school leaders to develop a pathway to normalcy, which consists of the following key components. Forgive me for reading, but I think it's the best way to do this. Roadmap on masking. While we all understand the need for masking during high rates of transmission, providing specific metrics for when this requirement can be optional as transmission rates decrease or vaccination rates reach a certain threshold is essential to maintaining our focus on teaching and learning. In other words, we recognize and have recognized for 2 years that masking is, on one hand, the reason that we're here, but on the other hand, it is an impediment and to learning at a certain level. So when will we be able to move through the pandemic and move away from masking? And this was sent out January 27th. We're looking for metrics. We're looking for direction. We're looking for a plan. And we don't have one. And what we've been dealing with, and all of the administrators will agree with this, Friday afternoon is when we get our memo from the State Education Department or the governor's office with the next change that's coming around. So we don't consider that as much a plan. We consider that being reactionary. We want a plan. So roadmap to masking is one of the ways to get to pathways to normalcy. The next is seeing the whole student. And seeing is not a word that we just happened to use. We really want to see the whole student. Our teachers want to see the students. And we want to get back to that normalcy, recognizing that it probably will never be back completely away from this pandemic. It'll always be with us, but we're figuring out how to work with it. So seeing the whole student, there's a section on that I won't read in it at all in its entirety. So that's frankly, you know, it's very nicely worded, but it's a very powerful message the way that it's delivered by one-on-one meeting with people in strategic places. The other document, and I only have 2 more. So the other document is from the New York State Council of School Superintendents. There are about 700 superintendents in New York State, and they're organized not in terms of a collective bargaining unit or anything like that, but they're organized. And this message was sent to the commissioner on New York State Department of Health, Mary Bessette, same person that I mentioned in that other one. And in part, this letter says, students in New York and across the country have experienced a roller coaster 23 months as they've gone from remote education to hybrid to almost universal in-person learning that's interrupted by periodic quarantines of students and staff. We believe we have now reached the time where the state needs to transition schools from a pandemic learning environment. And then specifically, it speaks to the major outstanding concern is the ongoing mandatory universal masking. And it goes on to talk about that, and it goes on to talk about a plan. We would like to have a plan to move out of the masking requirement. And the plan needs to, we recognize the plan needs to recognize the medical component of all of this too. It needs to be influenced by good medical practice. So that letter is over here if anyone wants it. And then finally, again, Lynn King attended a virtual meeting with the governor today at noon, a summary of that meeting. The meeting was with Governor Hochul, and it was with the New York State Council of School Superintendents who wrote that last letter, the School Administrators Association, which represents mostly principals and directors, the School Boards Association. I said there are 700 superintendents in New York State. Every one of those superintendents reports to a 3, 5, 7, 9 member Board of Education. So there are a lot of Board of Education members. The PTA, there are even more PTA members, and the Council of Big Five School Districts. And the topic is the state of the pandemic and universal masking. I won't go on because it's a little bit repetitive, but they do talk about an update that the governor recognizes that there's an update on the decreasing positivity rate, decreasing infections, and decreasing hospitalizations. The governor was explicit when she was talking about masking today at noon, in that the mandate for schools will continue through at least February break. And at that point, she'll evaluate the numbers. But she also stated that she recognizes a change is under consideration. So we're hoping that that consideration is going to lead to a plan that we can that school districts can have so that we can plan as we move forward. Removing masks, it seems simple, but there are all sorts of issues and components, so we remove the mask. What about the 3-foot social distancing? What about the 6-foot social distancing? What about quarantine? What about, there are all sorts of different aspects of this that need to be part of that plan. So that's my report. Thank you.
Doug, thank you for being an advocate for us and our school. But just to be clear, to reiterate for some that don't understand, we're waiting for direction from the governor. We're waiting for direction from the Department of Education. The school boards cannot go rogue and do their own thing. And it's frustrating for us as well because we're waiting for that direction. We want a direction to go in. We want to be able to tell our parents, our families, what's going to happen, and we don't know that yet. We see New Jersey, we see other states, they're lifting the mask mandates. Are we going to follow? We want to know, but we're waiting for that information just as much as everyone else, correct?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just want to add too that the Zoom meeting today was initiated by the governor's office, and I think in large part it is because of the work that Doug just spoke of, that we are very fortunate. Our BOCES Advocacy Committee is extremely effective and powerful. The NISCUS backs that up because that is statewide, and New York PTA also does a great deal of advocacy, and the New York State School Boards, obviously, they do a lot, but I feel that after today's presentation, she really is trying very hard. She listens. and I think she's really doing the best that she can do. It's challenging and she's getting hit on all sides. So, but I do feel like she's making an effort, but I think that the work that everyone's doing advocacy-wise is truly helping. So thank you, Doug, for those efforts.
Thank you. Thanks, Doug. Okay, we're going to move along. And next we have the president's report. Tricia Biles.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Trish, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear us, Tricia? Okay, we cannot hear you.
I don't know why.
Okay. Well, you know what? We can go, let's move on to the next presenter and we'll come back. We'll work on that and come back to you, Tricia.
Okay.
So let's have Katie Bruning with the Audit and Finance Committee report.
Okay. We met, the Audit and Finance Committee met on January 26th. And at that meeting, we reviewed the treasurer's report and the auditor's report. And there was not anything notable to discuss, and the committee's recommending these for approval. They're items C and D on the business consent agenda tonight. Due to the increased amount of the increased amount that the district received from federal funds, we were required to have an independent auditor complete a federal awards audit report. Raymond Preuser did that for us and indicated that the district was in compliance with all the requirements. This report is item E on the consent agenda tonight for approval. Information was shared on the state contract pricing for a new heavy-duty pickup truck to be purchased this year. And this is to replace a 2009 Ford truck that will be surplused and sold. This surplus approval is on tonight's agenda, consent agenda, item H. And since the new truck will be purchased through a New York State contract, it's not necessary for the board to approve that bid. The committee is recommending that the board approve a contract with Special Ed Solutions in the amount of $200 per month for Medicaid reporting. They are specialists in this area and provide a much-needed service that many of the area districts are using. And this is item F on tonight's business consent agenda for our approval. We reviewed our request for proposal timeline. This year, we will seek proposals for our insurance and auditing services. And Doug gave a great presentation tonight that covered several items that we reviewed, the portion of the budget that Doug talked about tonight, and the bus proposition and the capital reserve proposition. So thank you, Doug, for that very informative piece and for shortening my audit and finance report. The New York State Office of Comptroller reported that the district has no designation in regard to fiscal stress. Each year, they examine a variety of factors regarding fiscal stress and environmental stress, and we had an excellent report card. The only item that was noted was in regards to teacher turnover, and this was directly related to the number of teachers that retired last year. So nothing problematic. We got an update on the LGEA negotiations. And the next audit and finance meeting was originally scheduled. It was going to fall during February break, so we have rescheduled that for the following week, March 2nd. And one notation, shortly after we had our meeting, New York State Education Department notified the district that the corrective action plan regarding our inactive club funds had to be revised to include a completion date. That plan was reviewed by the committee members, and the Audit and Finance Committee recommends that the revised plan be approved by the board. That amended plan is item G on the business consent agenda tonight for approval. Yeah. Are we having questions?
Can you hear me?
Thank you, Katie.
Hello?
Trish?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So
Ah.
let's have the president's report from Tricia.
Excellent.
Go ahead.
Thanks so much. Just wanted to let everyone know we have a healthy pool of candidates. We feel very proud. So many folks are interested in taking on the superintendency of Lake George. We have 22 applicants. And many of those came in really right under the wire in the last days of over the weekend. And then so we are going to do some of our paper review today, and then we've added a session on Thursday to really dig in and make sure that we're set. And we have our first round of interviews next week. I want to give a thank you to Katie and Lynn and Rosemary, who had a subcommittee to come up with interview questions, and I think we're all set with our format for that first round, and we can fine tune anything when we are in session. The candidates will go through the first round, and those invited back will participate in the second round, which will be the end of February. Finalists will come back and they'll have the opportunity for a school tour, meetings with faculty and staff. There will be a forum with the community involved and a final interview with board. We're doing really well on target with our timing, our timeline. So good work, everybody. And I personally feel really good about the alignment with many of our candidates with our profile. So the listening sessions that we put out there that turned into that candidate profile that we put out there are really meaningful. So we thank everybody for your participation, and I know we have community members interested in being present for that community forum. So we will get specifics on that out to folks as soon as we know them.
Is that the end of your report, Trish?
That's the end of the report. Does anybody have questions for me? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Tricia.
I have a comment.
Okay, go ahead, Doug.
So I know we're in the search is conducted in phases. So the Board of Ed, but this is one of the most critical phases, and that is who are we getting as applicants. So I just want to commend the community and the groups that participated in the active listening exercises that have taken place over the last few months. I want to commend the Board of Education for the hours that you've already put into this, and you know that there are a lot of hours ahead, but you've done, I mean, at this point in time, to get 22 applications in this era of public school education, that's a really good number. You've done a really good job, so congratulations at this point.
Can you hear
Well,
me,
I'll just-
Marianne?
Yes, go ahead, Trish.
I just wanted to make a comment that when we see Jim Dexter next, I'm going to ask him how many the other districts got, and I'm guessing Lake George is on top.
Yeah, no, I say I think it is really exciting to have received so many applications, and I also feel this is a process that I haven't been through before, and it seemed daunting before we got started, but the process feels so sound, and it's just moving forward so well. It's really something to feel good about, and it's really exciting to be part of. So, okay, up next we've got Janine with Buildings and Grounds Committee report.
Our last Buildings and Grounds meeting took place on January 7th. We have a couple project updates. Good news, the 2018 building project is finally complete. The installation of the doors at the high school main entrance is now done. And the architects may have already, I'm not sure, but will be issuing a certificate of completion, at least at that point. That was where things were standing. So that's great. We had an update too for our future HVAC project. There has been an architectural and engineering technical review done with only 2 minor comments that our architects are addressing. Another good thing about this project is, again, once this project is approved, we'll be able to utilize New York State contracts, and that eliminates the need. We also discussed the continuing issue with our bus garage and options for the future in terms of perhaps another location for a bus garage. Our architects looked at a piece of property actually that was identified at the elementary school, but unfortunately, due to the terrain and existing structures, et cetera, it dead end in terms of being able to look at for a possible property. So we still have a ways to go with that. The district is looking for properties, around us, and we may be exploring other options that include sharing some of the services with neighboring. We ended the meeting actually with a discussion that also goes along with what Dr. Huntley spoke of in budget presentation. We talked about the fact that districts do rely heavily on building aid ratio to help fund their building projects, and our building aid ratio is low. So it certainly behooves to be looked to future ways to. The conclusion of our.
Any questions for Janine? Thank you, Janine. Okay, up next is me with a policy report. And, okay, so to get started, we have got one policy moving forward for action and second read this evening, and that's duties of the school attorney. We have got 7 policies up for first read tonight. 3 of them came before us per our routine policy manual review, and those are duties of the school physician, investments, and orienting and training board members. Duties of the school physician and the orienting and training board members, those had just some minor word revisions for clarity purposes and accuracy. And the investments policy was the one that Lynn Durway helped us to make current and included the regulation link within that. The 4 other policies that are up for first read this evening came to us by way of Erie One BOCES updates. One of them was budget adoption, and that policy, what was reflected in the update is that there is now a section titled contingency budget within that policy. That used to be a standalone policy, 5150 contingency budgets. That policy will be rescinded once this policy moves to second read. Another policy from Erie One, acceptance of gifts, grants, bequests. That was revised really to broaden language in the policy in recognition that different gifts can be accounted for in a variety of funds. And fire, emergency, bus drills, and bomb threats. That one, yes, that one was revised to reflect a change in the the requirement for students when they disembark from a bus. Previously, they had to step 10 feet in front of the bus when they're crossing the highway after disembarking. That's changed to 15 feet. And there's also an update, a revision that pertains to instruction, student instruction on acceptable seatbelt adjustment, how to adjust seatbelts, safety belts. And then the last policy is the financial accountability. And that just was a simple update to reflect, first of all, consistency with other policies, but to accurately state that the extra classroom activity fund reports will be provided on a quarterly basis. And so those are the policies on the agenda for this evening. In addition to that, the policy committee met on January 18th. The minutes from that meeting are present on the agenda this evening. And in that meeting, we really spent the bulk of the discussions receiving feedback from each other regarding DEI policy, and reviewed some of the survey themes that we had received from our ad hoc policy committee, DEI policy. And I will say we talked about we threw out some of the themes for just some general discussion, but at that time we didn't have this document that is also in our agenda, which is a policy ad hoc survey results summary. So I hope people have had an opportunity to take a look at that. It's pretty exhaustive. I wanted to make sure that everybody, who was on the committee, I hope everybody sees their thoughts and opinions reflected in that document. Some of the things that we talked about in the committee meeting, some of the things that stood out in terms of the introductory session, people felt that we weren't very, not super effective in conveying the need for a DEI policy, and there were opinions about that. Many people expressed an interest in making DEI policy succinct, direct, positive, non-threatening in language. There was emphasis on teaching critical thinking skills, including goals, training, accountability, transparency, characterizing DEI work as an ongoing process. And people emphasized many people asked that we, decrease the emphasis on one form of diversity over another. So those are just a few of the things, but if you take a look at the document, you'll see really everything that was, the feedback that we received. So we talked again about the value of, viewing our Lake George structures and systems through the lens of diversity and equity and inclusion, and having that be informed, that perspective be informed by pertinent data. Where we are at now with this process, with the ad hoc committee, the charge of the ad hoc committee, the scope of that work was to attend our introductory session, to review 4 sample policies, and to provide feedback through the online survey. At this point, that work is completed, and so now the policy committee is in process with taking under consideration all of the feedback that we've received from each other and from the ad hoc committee, and we're working on trying to create a draft of a policy. Once the policy committee is satisfied with the draft, we will share it with the ad hoc committee along with a consensus survey, and hear back from people at that time as well. And that would be before any policy comes to the board for any sort of a first read. And I think that's it for me. Am I leaving anything out? Okay. Any questions for me? And with that, we are ready for our first public comment period. And I'm going to ask, like we've done in the past, that if you have a comment, I have a list of names here, and I'll call you up one at a time. And after you've had major comment, if you wouldn't mind just taking a seat. And then after public comment is completed, if there are things that we can capably answer on the spot, then we will attempt to do that. And otherwise, we'll take note of your information. And if follow-up is required, we'll do that at a later time. Okay, so first, in this first session is for items that are related to our agenda tonight. And so first up, we've got Rod Cornelius.
Thank you. Just
Hi,
bear
Rob.
with me for a moment. Just want to make everyone aware that there is a GoFundMe page for Michelle Bennett. I don't know if you're aware of that, the audience is, but that's all I had to say. Sorry? Okay, thank you.
Next up, we've got Linda Clark. Hi, Linda.
Hi, I promise this is only 3 minutes. I timed it.
Yes, we are.
And unfortunately, I got so much to say, I had to put it in writing, so, I did the best I could here. Although I appreciate your effort by including the graphs, these are difficult to read and decipher regarding the DEI policy. Due to the similarity in colors for question 2, the percentages are not clear. For question 3, if I am reading this correctly, 6 responders understand the need for DEI policy, 6 do not, and 7 believe the introductory session was only somewhat effective in making it clear that there was a need for the policy. It seems to me that these results alone make a compelling argument for the district to put the next step on pause. There is clearly an overwhelming lack of understanding as to why this policy needs to be put in place. As an ad hoc committee member, I am concerned about the fact that only 19 out of at least approximately 50 people in attendance at the committee meeting made the choice to fill out the survey. This is less than half. There was nothing in the write-up to suggest that this low response is a problem, an indicator that there is a lack of communication. Given the controversy behind the policy, there is an essential need to convey a clearer message to stakeholders. Another meeting without games is necessary to explain what this policy means and the intent behind its development. Additionally, to the people in this audience, that we are not seeing the results of the survey. With all due respect, we are seeing a skewed point of view from the writer's perspective. Anyone can pick and choose from a list of answers and develop an argument based on selected information that is taken out of context to justify an action. Consequently, these are not the results. I suggest that all ad hoc committee members be allowed to read in full the 19 responses and come to their own conclusions regarding the outcome. Names and email information can be redacted to protect privacy. Finally, I sent to the BOE a list of questions to be answered tonight. One of those questions was regarding the district's refusal to include me in emails sent out to the district community. I was asked what type of information I was seeking in my request. It is impossible to answer this because it is impossible to name or predict everything. In relation to this question, I would like to submit to the BOE an October 4th email that was addressed to students, parents, and persons in parental relation, teachers, district staff, and community members. This email was the request for district stakeholders to participate in the DEI committee. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Time.
This request was not
No, we
sent
don't.
out.
Excuse me. Your time is limited. You may please sit down.
I have about 30 seconds left. I'm reading it much slower because it's very nerve-wracking. If I read it 100 miles an hour, you wouldn't be able to hear me with a mask on, and I'm reading it with a mask on, by the way. Thank you. It is impossible to answer this because it is impossible to name or predict everything. In relation to this question, I would like to submit to the BOE an October 4th email that was addressed to students and parents, etc. This email was the request for the district stakeholders to participate in the committee. Correct me if I'm wrong, this request was not sent out USPS to the community members. Consequently, the committee has not done its due diligence in including community members in the development of a highly controversial policy. Furthermore, it is clear in NICE's DEI development guidelines that all community stakeholders should have the opportunity to weigh in on this policy. Since all stakeholders are not on the district email list, I do not believe the district has given the community the proper notification. The district is obligated to do this and should offer another opportunity for all parties to listen, learn, and respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And I want to apologize to Lynn King here because I asked her to be my timer, but it just, I think that I like to know when 3 minutes is up, and then I just want people to try to be sensitive to that time limit. And I'm sorry because I put Lynn in that position. Thank you, Linda. Okay. Next up, we have Amanda Dewars.
Hello. So my first part of something that I guess I want to express, since I might not get answers, but I wanted to know who all is on the policy committee. And once you develop this draft and you share this draft, do we really get a say in what we feel passionate about? That's first. Then I wrote a big thing about masks, but really I'm just coming as a parent, and I know how it works. I really do. I'm aware of what we're up against. I know chain of command. I was married to a military serviceman. I know that. But I also believe in leadership, and I am in the healthcare industry, and I believe in leadership and advocacy. And when people can't speak up for themselves, in the case of our children, that's why I'm here. The masks are causing a lot of damage. I'm doing my clinical rotation on Four Winds right now, and I've talked to children, young adults, and adults. And there's a common denominator, and it's COVID. And I know we can't control that, but we don't live downstate. This is a small school. We have plenty of room to socially distance. I think it's time to unmask our kids. I encourage my kids not to wear masks. I'm not a bad parent, but I want them to be normal. This is not normal. Another appreciate you do. I know the hours that go in with the committee. I was able to help with the conduct committee. I get it, I know it. But I don't agree with your decision in choosing not to answer our questions when we have them, because they're concerns. And it's not something to come at you in a negative light, but they're concerns, and they should be addressed. And they should be addressed while we're here. It's hard for me to come up with questions before I come to the board meeting, because sometimes you guys say something and I'm like, oh, you know what? Let me ask about that. So I feel like you should revisit that, your decision to answer questions, because in my honest opinion, and it's not against anybody, but I choose that when I choose my board member in the future. And if I feel like somebody is not representing me and not answering my questions, then that is where my vote lies, because I'm big in that, and I'm big in advocating for our kids and our community. So I think it's important, I think we've done everything respectfully here on both ends, on everything that we're against, with different beliefs here and there. I think everybody's been very respectful. I think that's what I love about this district. So that's all I had to say. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Amanda.
Can I just address that really quickly, Mary Ann.
Go ahead.
Really quick. We would love to respond to everything, but, you know, to be fair and equitable to everybody, if we do start answering questions, yours may be very simple, the next one may be, and we can't pick and choose. And we do want to get to everybody. So we can answer short things if we can, but that's why we say we do the follow-up email. And if you feel like you aren't getting your responses via email or any other way, please let us know, because we are very passionate, the whole board, I'm sure speaking for the whole board, of making sure that we listen to the community and answer their concerns.
Mr. McCabe?
I'm at the superintendent search. I believe all the tables that were there, they came up with a census that they wanted to have experience necessary for a superintendent. Okay? Now, you guys take the feedback and kind of do the wishes of the people, right?
All feedback is considered, yep.
It's considered. Well, why isn't it put in? If out of 5 tables, 4 of them like superintendent experience, isn't that what the people want? To represent the people, but yet on the BOCES bulletin for superintendent says no experience needed, necessary. How is that? Someone answer that? How can we have that when the people that were on the committee that you guys wanted the feedback from, and then you dismiss it? So I was just curious.
Okay, I'm just going. We didn't know. It's very tough out there. We didn't know the candidates we were going to receive. We were hoping like we were going to get a lot of candidates, but we wanted to open the pool up. And of course, we're going to go through each of the candidates, and experience is something that was expressed in those groups that we had. And definitely that's taken into consideration. But we didn't know the numbers we were going to get. This is difficult times. So we wanted to open up the whole scope of things. And then, I mean, here we have 22. We're able to narrow it down based on the feedback that we've received from the community. So our process has just started. We're not anywhere near. So just because we had a wide scope in the beginning, doesn't mean that we're not taking your consideration, your concerns, or your voice into account.
And I'm just going to interrupt for 1 second. And James, I'm just going to ask that you complete your statement and then take a seat, and we'll go from there.
Got a bunch of questions here. So out of the 22, how many have superintendent experience?
So James, we're not going to have a back and forth up at the mic, but we're going to write down what you have to say, and when you're done with your
So you gonna
statement,
answer them all? Okay.
well, if we can, we will try
Okay.
to be
So,
reasonable.
well, it just appears to me that you guys go through the motions of listening to us and going and give us the head shake, yep, yep, yep. And I'll give you another, that's the next one. So I've been up here before and I've said, your words are one thing and your actions are opposing what you say. And it's just a continuation of this, okay? And I'll give you, what about we were told the changes for the Warrior head, the heritage image was put on hold, but yet the baseball caps for the spring season no longer have the Warrior symbol. Who made that decision? Okay, I'll sit down.
Thank you, James. I want to assure you that all feedback is taken very seriously. We use the feedback from our listening sessions to build our candidate profile that was put out by BOCES. And I feel like that work, having all the voices of stakeholders, is part of the reason we have such a large turnout, because we took a lot of time to gather all that information and to synthesize it. And I feel really, it makes me sad that people feel that we're not listening, because I promise you, we are listening to everything every stakeholder says to to us and we're taking it to heart. And so I'm sorry that you don't feel heard, but I promise you, you are being heard. And we're not going through the motions. We are living what we say. And I don't know what we can do differently to convey that to the community. And I guess, yeah, I'm not sure what actions we can do differently, but I promise you, you're being heard. And, when Amanda spoke and feels like her questions aren't being answered, I'm glad Melissa's, circle back. If you ever feel like a question's not being answered, we can't always answer them. We don't necessarily know the answers. We try to give a brief answer at the board meeting. If we have the answer on the spot or the expertise, sometimes the superintendent knows that. So we do answer what we can on the spot. And I think there's some confusion that people are required to send us questions ahead of time in order to have them answered. That policy is not new, and the interpretation of that, I think, is a little bit, there's a little bit of confusion. If we have questions a week in advance, we're more likely to be able to address them and have some answers. People can ask anything on the evening, but we can't always answer that. But we'll do our best, and we will certainly follow up if a follow-up is needed.
Are you talking about questions that people email? So the board, I'm just going to say this one thing, and then we're going to move on to our last public comment person here. We do receive emails with questions. We do our very best to address each and every one of them in a response. If somebody has a request that an issue be addressed within a board meeting and we have enough opportunity to do that, then we try to do that. And so I very much hope that people who have sent us emails over the past week and have had much, if not all of their questions addressed already this evening, but if not, I hope those individuals will stand up and re-ask, and we'll try to address as we can and make sure that information is shared. And I
Mary, could
echo, yeah,
something?
please do, Lynn.
We really appreciate the input from the community. We're here because you voted us in to be on this board and to direct the finances and to keep our vision clear and to educate your children. And this is a business meeting that happens to be held in public. And I would just like to comment that this board, I've been around a long time. Most of you know that about me. And I can tell you that this board has done more trainings than any board I've ever been involved with. They have attempted to be more transparent than any board I've ever worked with. And they truly, I can tell you, we do listen to what you say, and we try very hard to be communicative and get back to your responses. And I will say too that our superintendent and our principals, their doors are always open. And if we don't have an answer for you right here tonight, we can direct you to the appropriate person that will give you all the details that maybe board members don't even have. So, but I would just ask that you respect that we create 2 public comment times on our agenda. But this is a business meeting for the board. So we're trying to be respectful and listen to you, but I would ask that you show us the same respect. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Okay, last person on the list here is Lisa Doster.
Good evening, all. Thank you for
Hi,
the opportunity
Lisa.
to speak.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name.
Lisa Doster, I thought
Oh,
they
thank you.
announced it.
Yep.
I, as for like I'd sent in some email questions, and I'm not going to rehash those. You have them, and you will have an opportunity to answer them at some time, and then I'll be happy to share them in another meeting. Tonight, I would like to advise that our school plans and policies have some type of disclaimer added to them to allow for amendment at any given time. 2 weeks ago, Commissioner Rosa from the State Education Department stated districts must abide by any commitments to mask wearing that is contained in their publicly posted reopening school plan for 2021-22 school year. If we had a disclaimer in our plan allowing for any type of amendment or changes to be made to the plan, then the state would not have been able to hold the school to the plan that we had placed months ago. Things change, we evolve, we have paradigm shifts. We need to be able to evolve through the motions as they're happening. The school could amend and move to any changes it wanted to if we had that disclaimer on there, and the state couldn't do anything legally about it. The next thing is the children are tired of masking. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. Some children were removed from school for not wearing a mask. Why? Most children and staff don't even have the masks that are truly recommended for protection. Children should not be removed from school. The social emotional issues alone have impacted our children, and there is a better way to handle those that are tired of wearing a mask. And I don't think removal from school is one of them. I understand you do have to set policies and follow them. Who will manage the school physician? Is this person going to be employed? Are they going to be a contracted medical group? Who will oversee the medical board recertification data? Who will manage the credentialing and re-credentialing of the physician every 2 years as it's required? Who is going to handle the liability issues and the insurance to cover any liabilities that may arise? There's ways that we can also look into. If we don't want to hire a physician and have them on staff, we could possibly work with Hudson Headwaters. They have a mobile van to send around. Maybe we could set something up for a facility time. I don't know. I'm just thinking outside of the box and sharing my thoughts with you.
Lisa, can I ask you just to, I'm not sure what you're referring to we have a medical, we have a school physician.
Are they employed by the school? Are they contracted by the school? How is that handled? So we currently have one.
Yes.
Yes. It's appointed at the reorganizational meeting every July.
Okay, wonderful. All right, and how often are they here? Okay, all right. And as for, moving on, as for the superintendent, how many finalists will there be?
There are 22 applications, and we're in the middle of our process.
Right, but the finalists,
Well,
you
we
will
don't
have
know that
several
as of yet.
chosen.
I can't give you a number because we haven't finished.
I didn't know if you had an idea of how many people you're going to be walking through the school and interviewing further at that third stage. That's it. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike Gates, go ahead.
Mike Gates, I live in the district. I have two students that attend Lake George. Quick things, three quick things, actually, maybe one quick fix for you guys. Any questions that are asked in this public forum, they should be documented and your response should be attached and it should be made part of the meeting minutes. And that way, anybody, I see the benefit in this because I might have the same question that's already been asked, but should I come up here and ask the same question just so you email me too? You know, if you have the same concern, you would like to get that response. So that would be a quick fix. Post them on the website under the minute with the minutes, and that issue's taken care of. Second issue is your policy with regards to public comment. I know it just went through review again. This is the third month in a row that you've asked people to sign up speak at these sessions, the first session or the second session, and it's not part of your policy. We have to practice what we preach. It's not in there. I'm not going to do it until it's in there. The third thing, I discussed briefly with Dr. Huntley a couple weeks ago, but I've been fighting a sinus infection. The way this board conducts business is against the open meeting law. Let's take DEI, for example. DEI originated in the Culture and Climate Committee back in 2020. From there, it went to the board. No vote was taken on anything to do with it, and it was referred to the policy committee. Your subcommittees do not constitute a quorum of the board. They cannot do anything without board approval. Plain and simple, can't do it. Unless a vote is taken at this meeting to adopt the recommendations of that subcommittee, everything that they do means nothing. So right now, your DEI policy has no legs to stand on. It went so far as there was never even a vote for the ad hoc committee. The
You
policy
can't
committee-
vote in a committee meeting, sir.
What's that?
You can't vote in a
In the committee meeting.
Correct, but it has to go to the board, and the full board has to adopt the recommendations and directions of the subcommittee. Never was done. So now we're starting a policy. We almost had a contractor come in, and no vote was taken on that. We're going to write a policy about it. No vote was taken on it. So basically, it means nothing. The way you guys are doing things is messed up. Plain and simple, it's against the law.
Let's just let Mike finish his statement.
Okay.
Are you done?
Yes.
Thank you,
All right.
Mike. And Mike, no, go ahead, take a seat. I just want to speak to that really quickly.
Thank you, Marianne. Someone better speak. Yeah.
With regard to, with the example that you've given, all of our committee work that we do, we don't have a quorum of board members. A quorum is 4 board members or more. And so we get together in these small committees and, we focus on the topics that we're there to focus on. Nothing, and those are open meetings, they are transparent meetings, but nothing gets acted on until it comes to the full board for a recommendation. And so there is no vote until it comes to the board for a recommendation. And at that point, there's, information that comes with the recommendation to provide a basis for those recommendations.
Just as a quick comment, and I did speak with Mike about this. Mike brought this to my attention, but at the same time, the committee structure, the governance structure at Lake George is a little bit different than what I'm accustomed to. It doesn't mean that it's wrong, it just means that it's different. So I did check on that with our school attorney and the structure of this Board of Education, and our school attorney felt that it was fine what we're doing. It doesn't mean that it can't be changed or it can't be made different than what it is, but according to our school attorney, what we're doing in the committee structure works fine in education law.
And one final comment on that topic too, is that just because something comes from the committee up to the Board of Ed, it doesn't mean that it's automatically voted on in the affirmative. We've got,
Business.
we have got our school business consent agenda is up next. Correct? Yep. Dr. Huntley? Number 4, school business. Yep.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education approves the school business consent agenda items A through H. And among those motions include the minutes of January 11th, the recommendations of the Special Education Committee, the treasurer's report, the auditor's, claims auditor report, the audited federal awards statement. There's also an agreement with the special ed solutions for all Medicaid eligible services. In addition, there are a number of policies, a couple of policies anyhow, and that's the school duties of the school attorney. And then finally, there is the item that was mentioned earlier about the obsolete vehicle disposal and sale.
Move approval.
Okay, we've got a motion from Lynn, second from Katie. Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next, we have field trip consent agenda. We have 3 field trips that have been requested. One is the VEX Robotics team, an opportunity to travel in competition to Syracuse on March 11, 12. We also have the FBLA State Leadership Conference competition in Rochester, and if they continue, then they would be moving on to the Nationals. And then we have the model OAS. It's been, and that one's to Washington, D.C. That's March 16, 17.
Move approval.
Second, Rosemary. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have the 2022-23 school calendar.
I recommend that the board resolve that the Lake George Central School District 22-23 school calendar be approved.
So moved.
Lynn first, Rosemary second. Any questions about the calendar? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
It's my recommendation that the board approves the resolution under capital project. This resolution is necessary in order to approve the scope of work and funding utilized for the ARP and the CRSSA grant funds. These are the federal funds that are associated with the stimulus dollars. The project will be fully funded by federal stimulus funds totaling $1,465,942. $942,012 is from the American Rescue Plan funds, and $523,930 is from the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations funds. The work is for renovations to the elementary school, junior high school, and more specifically, its HVAC units to improve indoor air quality. Board has received at least 2 presentations on this, so we're asking for your meeting.
Move approval.
Lynn as the first and Melissa second. Any questions? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the faculty staff consent appointments and items A through F. That includes Catherine Gibbons as a teaching assistant, effective January 27. An unpaid leave of absence for Lisa Fox, administrative assistant, effective July 13 through August 9. Appointment of Michael Grant to the probationary position of full-time bus driver. Appoint Catherine Gibbons to the position of long-term substitute elementary teacher, effective January 28. There's a list of substitute teachers there's a substitute list of substitutes not hired through BOCES. And also the extracurricular and co-curricular list with salaries.
So moved.
Lynn King's first, Katie second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And now we have our Board of Education comments and discussion. Anybody have anything on their mind? Marie?
I attended the FBLA district meeting today to be a judge for them. It was very impressive. Our students were well-spoken. They did, impromptu speaking. They did interviewing skills. They did an exceptional job. We also had Queensbury School with us, and those students who won awards today will go on to the states, which we just approved their field trips. So I just wanted to let you know that I participated in that. It was great, and it was great to see the kids. So, yep. And Brenda and Karen do a great job, by the way. Yep.
I just wanted to just go back and revisit a little bit, sitting here reflecting on some of the feedback regarding the DEI ad hoc survey. And, one of the things I really just wanted to share with the board here is that, we recognize, that there was difficulty in having like satisfactory understanding of, what things that different people were trying to express in that meeting. We recognize that there was tension in the room, but I have to say, we're not like experts. We really put it out there. We tried to gather a large group of people into a room and share ideas with each other and see what kind of common understanding that we could have, and try to communicate with each other. And it's hard. We had, if you look at that document of the results survey, and by the way, those survey results were not, they were not like analytical. They weren't analyzing. It was really just a reflection of what people had to share. But if you take a look at it, there was a lot of diversity of opinion in that room, and it's hard. It's harder work, but it's like where we can start doing our best work because we are hearing from the voices of our community. And, we got to know each other a little bit better. We understand our community a little bit better. I know I understood myself a little bit better in hindsight, especially after reading the feedback. So, these are growth opportunities. And I just want to say, even though I know there's like tension and it's difficult, like I think overall it's really positive, and it's good for us because, we belong to each other. This is our community. And so I think we can feel proud of that. I just really wanted to make that comment. Mm-hmm.
I would like to comment. I'm a member of the policy committee. So, but I did want to also comment on the fact that, Marianne, I really appreciated the fact that when you were trying to go over the data from the people that did respond, and I agree, we all would have liked to have seen more than 19 people out of the 50 respond. Certainly that would have been, or 30, okay, 37, sorry. But I appreciaed the fact that you really faced it head on and didn't try to shy away from the concerns that people had when they did respond in the survey. And so, I feel badly that people maybe the answers are being skewed somehow when really, I can attest to the fact that actually it was the exact opposite. Attention was really given to people who expressed concern, because that's where we had to be able to we really want to settle there and look at, well, geez, what are people's concerns? What can we do, to help diminish these concerns? So I just wanted to say, I appreciated that very.
And hopefully the focus was I want it to be more than just focused on, I want to hear from everybody.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people in that room, people came expecting different things. And so we want to make sure that it is, that we try to provide a safe environment for people to express themselves. But again, it's like, we can't do everything all in one night. These are the beginning of conversations and good processes. So thank you. Anybody else have anything they want to contribute?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Trish.
Excellent. I just want to point out that, we're still in a very early part of this process. And, we still have the development, the reflection on the data that's going on within that policy committee. Then there's that survey that you were speaking of that goes back to the ad hoc committee. But then beyond that, once a policy is getting recommended to the board, we have the 3 readings to the board. So it goes to the wider public. It's not simply that particular ad hoc. And that's just part of our regular protocol with policy. So this is an extended process with lots of opportunity for wide engagement. That's all.
Thank you, Tricia. Okay, if there's nothing else, we will move on to our second public comment session. And first up, we have got Rod Cornelius. Looks like Rod's gone. Okay. And Kim is left too. Okay. Linda Clark.
Linda Clark. My concern regarding the public participation in the meetings was the lack of BOE response to questions put to the BOE by community members. I noticed that 2 meetings ago when I asked a question, Dr. Huntley felt compelled to ask the BOE president for permission to answer. Because of these observations, I took to the BOE policy and carefully read the procedures regarding the meeting requirements. With this, I discovered that questions for the BOE meetings had to be sent in 1 week prior to the meeting. Last week, I submitted 5 questions for this board to answer. Instead of my questions being heard at this public forum and the answers being delivered in a public forum, I received answers via email from the interim superintendent. Although I appreciate Dr. Huntley's effort, with respect, I have serious problems with this BOE response. To begin answering these questions outside of the public BOE meeting is not the correct procedure. It is likely a violation of open meetings law. The answers are not coming from the BOE members, but from a single individual. These questions were designed for all to hear, and if so be it, for all to comment on. I fully expected an area in the agenda which indicated that the BOE was answering public questions. By doing what you did, you eliminated public opinion and knowledge of the issues raised by stakeholders and prevented community members from asking public questions. I use the plural in this statement because I am aware that this form of response was also received by others. It is clear that the BOE does not want to answer questions publicly. This is a serious problem that must be addressed. To date, research has shown that the use of masks does more harm than it does good, especially for children. Additionally, 36 states have no mask mandates or prohibit them. For the remaining states, this is nothing but a political mandate. Research has proven that there is serious harm to the children, which is affecting their social, emotional, and cognitive development. By continuing this practice, the district is negatively impacting the children's SEL, something that is on the forefront of concern and the basis for developing many new policies. Depression is at its all-time high, and learning at the all-time low. We need to stop this insanity and stop imposing unreasonable and harmful restrictions and mandates on children. The excuse that it protects adults is no longer an argument. Everyone has more than enough time to choose and be vaccinated. With this said, I would like this board to respond to my second question that I submitted over a week ago. I am formally requesting that this board make a motion and a second calling to a vote to update the district COVID policies, and unwilling to do this, I am requesting that the BOE members be polled tonight on the following question. If
Your
you
time is up,
were
please.
if you were to vote on a change in mask mandates in the district to make them optional for all, would you vote in favor of this change?
Thanks, Linda. Yeah, thank you, Linda.
I would just like to make a couple of points as a matter of fact, that public comment sessions in a Board of Education meeting are not required by law. It is a choice of the Board of Education, and this board and district chooses to have 2 public comment sessions. And in following that, I would like to remind everyone that it is a public comment session. It is, if we can answer short questions, that we will really, excuse me, we didn't. Could you let me finish, please? Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead, Lynn.
I just want to remind everyone that it is public comment. It's not question and answer time. If we can answer a short question, we're more than happy to do that. And we always make everyone know that there are avenues to get your questions answered. So we are trying the best that we can to run a monthly business meeting in which all of us, elected officials, unpaid, spend a lot of time preparing for. We do a lot of work behind the scenes, and there's no offense intended in any of our public comment sessions. So again, I would ask that we try to be respectful to you, to provide you answers when we can in the time that we have, because tonight we have a proposed executive session. So you people will be able to go home, but we are going into another segment of our meetings. So again, I would ask that you try to show us the same respect that we show you.
Okay, and I would like to add too, Linda, and I feel bad because I can see that we just updated our public policy, public comment policy. And so people are looking at it, not that much has changed within it. What we really tried to change was to make sure that, it's ironic, we tried to make sure that the messaging was welcoming. Ultimately, whoever's presiding over the meeting has a responsibility to run an orderly meeting, and so that we can get the business of the meeting completed and of the district. And that is why there are some topics in there that put some guidelines on things like public comment, even if the board is commenting too long, whoever's presiding, but in policy, we try to keep the language, not so binding, that we can't be adaptable to the need of the moment. And so at the end of the day, whoever's presiding over the meeting has discretion to extend timeframes for public comment or to limit timeframes. But it's important that people recognize that this board is interested in public comment. There has been some confusion over submitting questions in advance. There is no requirement to submit a question in writing a week before, and that is a misinterpretation of the policy if that's what people are reading. If you have something that you would like the board to be able to address in a public meeting, then if you can get some of those requests in within a week before, then there's a possibility that can happen. It's not required. You can, and in fact, and Mike, you're not required to sign up on this paper to ask a question. We simply ask that people do it so that if there's a follow-up that we want to have, that we have your name and contact information here. but we're really not, it's not meant to be as tight as I think people are perceiving it. We're just trying to set some reasonable guidelines for practice. And that's another point, is that we don't put every detail of our practices in our policy, because these kinds of little practices might change over time. But the idea is, this is a practice that's working for us right now, but in general, that's not necessarily something, every piece of that would go in policy. So I hope that that clears up a little bit. It's really, it's really important that you understand that your comments are welcome, and that the guidelines around it through policy are really meant to just make sure we have a way to get the business of the district completed here. I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you. And I think that our last, oh, and your other question about, I'm sorry, I'm just going to answer this one as well. With regard to, you asked that we take a vote in the moment here to adjust our protocols, and if not, take a poll on individual board members' opinions. Do I have that correct? So, and I appreciate, and I so appreciate your passion for trying to be like practical and kind of cut through some longer bureaucratic processes. But I'm sorry to say that that isn't the way that we conduct our business when information, when we are, when a vote comes before the board, it comes to us by the superintendent, and it is informed by our shared decision-making collaborative practices. And so that way, when it comes to us, we know what we're actually voting on and what's under consideration within a vote. And so, well, I appreciate where you're coming from. I really do. That's just not, this board is, we are grounded in our processes, in our sound processes. And so that's the answer to that question. So that's just not how we go about it. And so, and that's another piece of this, is that, you know, if we're doing our job properly through our board role and our board exercising our responsibilities as a board member, our really a personal opinion is not even relevant to this. And that is, you know, we act as a 7-member board. And again, we take information under consideration that comes to us through our processes and from the superintendent to us. And so that would, I don't believe, be an appropriate or, you know, action to take. Thank you. And I think with that, we are now at our, oh, I'm so sorry, Lisa. I saw you there and I forgot.
Really quick, I'd like to, ask for an apology, whoever said the negative comments after the first public comment session. Somebody said they had work to get to, real work to get to. Would somebody like to apologize? Because it really made a lot of people angry to walk out of here. So that's my first thing.
I don't know who said that, and I am.
It needs to be conducted in a professional manner. I just asked that.
It's unfortunate. Yeah.
We all have things we need to do, and we understand the importance of your role. The one thing that I wanted to get up during this public session to speak about is the snow on the other side of the crosswalk in front of the school. I drop my son off there a couple times a week, and there's snow piled right where the crosswalk is. There's been a couple instances where cars have almost hit students, not in our district, but in other districts. But that keeps the children from walking off of the road safely. It's definitely an issue. So if you could look into that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Lisa. Pardon?
It's across the street.
Okay, so that concludes our public comment session, and
Mary
next
Ann?
up yes, Tricia.
There was one question that was asked that that I don't think we addressed that came to us in a question, and it had to do with the minutes of a Culture and Climate Committee. Would you like me to
Yep,
address
go ahead.
that?
Yes, thank you, Trish.
Okay, I just wanted to say that as chair, that yes, I take responsibility for the language in the minutes, and that the question had to do with it had to do with the logo, the Indian head, and the answer was just that the question was about it being divisive. And the reason that it was stated in the minutes that way was because of the controversy that was recognized, and that there were differences of opinion about how that logo was represented. And that, we can say that right now we are on pause, and the board has not taken any action in regards to the Indian head since, we were speaking with Dr. Huntley in previous board meetings. So there has been no board action.
Thank you, Tricia. Okay, so we have a proposed motion to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussions involving contract negotiations, LGEA, and discussion on the employment history of particular persons. Second from Rosemary. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And so we do not plan to come back into open session following our executive session. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody, next week.